That's fine. Look,
10 past,
um, improvisation is always good, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
cool. All right, in that case, let's get started. Hello, everyone listening, both currently live and also in the future if you're watching the recording. My name is Shrey. I'm one of the co-presidents of CSCSOC. With me, I have Kai, who is our ARC delegate and the executive of CSCSOC. And today we'll be introducing you to the lovely Dr. Nicky Ringland. Nikki has done some really awesome stuff in the industry and outreach and tech, working at companies like Grok Learning and doing a PhD in computational linguistics. So today we're going to be here about hearing a bunch of cool stuff and a very specific talk for the first half an hour. Then later on, we'll be doing a more of an AMA sort of Q&A sort of style question and answer stuff. So if that's a great introduction, take it away, Nikki.
Yeah, awesome. So just for a bit of a caveat and an apology, I'm not sure. I was brought here under false pretenses. I always am. No, it's getting into the season of International Women's Day is next week. Currently in Australia, there's a lot of talk around women and a whole bunch of political issues that are going on right now. And diversity is a challenging topic. One completely different caveat is that I currently have a bit of a cold, so bear with me if I take long tea breaks and my voice will hopefully pan out. But I gave this talk, or a different version of it, several months ago when I was invited to talk about diversity. And I apologize, it's a little bit ranty, but hopefully it will be interesting to you all. And if not, then I don't know, go and play with your phones, some matching gem game, and come back in half an hour and ask me questions. But there'll be swearing and graphs and citations and a Star Trek poster and plants. So if that's not enough to keep you occupied and interested, I don't know what is. But first, when we're talking about diversity, this is a really complicated and complex topic. It's more than just gender. It's more than just race and racial identity. It's more than all of these things combined. I'm going to talk a little bit about girls and women in tech. I'm going to talk a little bit about racial identity in tech. But mostly I'm still learning this stuff. We're all still learning this stuff. We all need unicorns when learning. Here's a unicorn. But be gentle, be open, be honest, and let's all learn something, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so cast your mind back to the before time when we could meet up in meet space with offices and conferences. I love conferences. This is what it feels like to be in tech, to go to conferences. Unless, of course, you're a woman, in which case, this is what it feels like to be in tech. It's a little bit different there. So you might be wondering, why does representation even matter? And if you are, I will call you a doofus, but you're in the right place. So we're going to go over some of these things. Well, why does it matter if you don't see yourself in the space where you feel like you belong? Well, for one thing, tech jobs are literally the future, from social networks to online banking, GPS-enabled smartwatches, self-driving cars, you name it. Technology is shaping our present and will only play a more and more important role in our future. But the ability to just consume technology is good, but actually the ability to create it is more and more essential in the world. Also, fat stacks owe bills, yeah. Tech is a great way to lift people out of poverty, reduce the wage gap, all sorts of things. But if we're talking about actually designing the future, that's pretty cool, right? I think it's pretty cool. It turns out the future comes really quickly nowadays. This is a great XKCD comic from September 2014. And it's talking about designing an app to check whether or not the user is in a national park. And that's pretty easy. Just check the GPS from a database. And then also to check whether or not a photo is of a bird. And in this case, they've said, sure, I'll need a research team in 5 years. It's very difficult to explain in computer science the difference between what is super easy and what is almost impossible. But also this, identifying whether or not a photo is of a bird, 6-7 years ago was virtually impossible, when nowadays it's pretty good. I searched for bird in my Google Photos. Those photos of books include the word bird, just to be precise. So how come we can identify photos of birds and flowers and ice cream and affogato? Like, this is going pretty well. I think we're living in the future. Is this our magical utopia? Have we transcended into this future realm? Well, crap. No. It turns out this is not ideal. In this case, Google Photos has identified a photo of a Black person as a gorilla, which is not cool. Not intentional, but very not cool. So the issue here is that algorithms need really good training data in order to be accurate, or at least that's one of the issues. The other issue is how machine learning systems actually work, mostly just by poking the data until things start looking right. Welp. Okay, but this is like, this was from 5 or so years ago. I'm sure Google, my current employer, have got it right now, right? They're definitely. So I searched for some gorillas in my photos and some chimpanzee, ape. No, maybe I just don't have any photos of animal. Oh, I do. I've got plenty of photos of monkeys. And being specific, I've got macaws and spiders and elephants. And I think that's what they've done. They've just stopped those search terms. That's not a good solution. And it's not just me picking on my employer if this works. So that was an HP webcam with advanced face tracking, admittedly advanced from 2009, but it's still an issue. We can't say that things like this are just fixed now because they keep happening all the time. So last year, a delightfully horrible experiment happened on Twitter. So on the mobile app, images are cropped based on an algorithm, and that algorithm is magical and we don't know what it's doing, but we can guess. So these two images cropped here to show Mitch McConnell's beautiful face are very long images with someone else at the other end of those images. Any ideas on why it cropped Mitch and cropped out Obama? Oh dear. But maybe it's maybe Twitter just really likes Mitch McConnell. Also not true. That's not the case. It also, it's not fiction. Oh, well, I mean, well, shit. Like this is not cool. Not cool. So some of you might have seen the movie Hidden Figures, which is a great movie. And of course, we all know that the poster focused in, that's right, on the lead actor, Kevin Costner. This one is particularly beautiful given that the movie itself was about underrepresented minorities in STEM. So yeah, here's a delightful image cropping from Yahoo. And here we are back at Twitter. This is, okay, so image cropping algorithms, this is clearly not ideal, but it won't kill you, right? This isn't a real problem. It's just the algorithm speaking. Well, as it turns out, it might kill you. Algorithmic Bias in healthcare found that an algorithm that determined what care 200 million people in US hospitals would need heavily favored white patients over Black patients. It's problematic in employment. In 2015, Amazon, fair credit to them, publicly announced this. They realized that their algorithm used for hiring employees was biased against women because it was trained on the people who had already been hired, which is not an unbiased sample. And in the justice system, there are truly terrifying algorithms used to determine your chance of reoffending, which will determine whether or not you get sent to jail for a little bit or a long time, or maybe even avoid jail completely. So specifically here, the model predicted twice as many false positives for Black offenders than white offenders. We need more graphs. Yeah, this seems bad. The white defendants were skewed heavily towards lower risk categories. Okay. The worst part of this is that it was no better at predicting crimes than random people. No better than random people. All right. So let's break this down just a little bit more. Let's talk about some sampling bias. So sampling bias occurs when not all elements of the sample have the same probability of appearing in the data set. So if we start thinking about different groups of people and that they're disproportionately policed, they might be disproportionately arrested, and then that arrest data is going into feeding your algorithm. Let's talk about Australia for a second. These are some stats I pulled today. How many cops are nearby? These are the number of police per 1,000 people. So you can see we've got 2 or 3 people, give or take, unless you're in the Northern Territory where it's double that. Okay, that seems weird. Now let's look at look at who is in those neighborhoods. And look at the population, the percentage of the population who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. You can see that disproportionately a lot of this population in the Northern Territory does identify as such. So what you've got here, we're sampling more frequently communities with higher Indigenous populations, and we're surprised at higher rates of incarceration in our Indigenous communities. But remember, convictions does not equal the number of crimes. These crimes are not proportionate to arrests. It's a sampling issue, as well as a lot of other issues, but a sampling issue. The issue is that if we build algorithms based on the data that we have, this just amplifies real-world discrimination. All right, so I'm supposed to be talking about women in tech, not racial profiling of the police, but let's get back on topic. Where are these binders full of women? How did we end up in tech where there are fewer women and other racial minorities than not? One common suggestion is that it's a pipeline problem. Now, the analogy here is that lots of women or girls are getting pushed into this pipeline that comes out as a genuine bona fide tech person, but then we just lose them at higher and higher rates than we lose the boys. So in this case, we lose them at primary school and at high school and then at university and then majoring in STEM. Okay, so there's a few issues here. Let's ignore any possible systemic problems that might push women out of the tech force after graduation from university. You're all fine once you get to the glass, right? And we'll focus on this bit here instead for the most part. In the school system in New South Wales, these are the rates of students who do maths or IPT or SDD, which are the 2 computing subjects. So you can see not that many people do computing compared to maths. Let's focus in on those who do. So IPT, we've got a bit of a gender ratio issue happening already. And SDD, which is the only subject that requires any amount of programming or coding, the numbers look even worse. Specifically in 2012, we've got 93 girls. Last year we had 228 girls. Woohoo! That's a lot better, right? But you can see that by here, we've already got a big issue. So even if it were a pipeline problem, it'd be more like this kind of a pipeline problem where the throughput just isn't anywhere near enough compared to boys. So it wasn't always this way. How did we get here? If you cast your mind way back to the before time, to World War II, I acknowledge that none of us can actually do that, but bear with me here. So in the early years of World War II, there was a plan devised to build a computing machine that would calculate the bomb trajectories, which is kind of an important thing when you're dealing with bombs falling on parts of your country that you want to protect. And this team of about 100 human computers were trained to hand calculate firing tables for artillery shells. So this task required a really high level of mathematical skill, the capacity to solve nonlinear differential equations. It used differential analyzers and slide rules. But computing was essentially considered clerical work, a task that was too tedious for male engineers to engage in. So the Ballistic Research Laboratory hired a bunch of women who mostly had university degrees and displayed mathematical aptitude to do the job instead. So as the war progressed, projecting and predicting the flight plan of these bombs became more and more important for military strategy. And the lab was under increased pressure to churn out more and more results. So in 1942, a physicist proposed constructing a programmable general purpose electronic calculator that would automate this computing process. Now, Hermann Goldstein is on the right, the far right there, and it was him and his partner, Adele Goldstein, who ran the lab. Now, Adele and Hermann ran this lab, and the two of them were charged with selecting the first people trained to program the ENIAC, was this electronic computer. And they selected the most adept mathematical minds from the group of human calculators, who were all women. And they also had a fairly good sense of who the best ones were, given that Adele also taught some of the classes that were run. Now, a quick aside on Adele, because she seems badass. She had a maths background, which brought her to the research lab. She didn't want to be a high school teacher, but she was okay with this because it was more interesting. One of her students said, "I'll never forget the first time I saw Adele. She ambled into class with a cigarette dangling from a corner of her mouth. She walked over to her table, threw one leg over its corner, and began to lecture in her slightly cleaned up Brooklyn accent. I knew I was a long way from Maryville, Montana, where women had to sneak down to the greenhouse to grab a smoke." Now, spoilers, but Jean and Adele went on to work really quite closely together because she was one of the women chosen to be these first computer programmers, machine operators, sorry, not programmers, but they were essentially the first programmers of the ENIAC. Interestingly, it was self-confidence that was required here more than any actual ability or aptitude. And I love it from this quote. "I had no idea what the job was or what the ENIAC was. All I knew that I might be getting in on the ground floor of something new, and I believed I could learn and do anything as well as anyone else," which is a pretty good way of thinking about it. And I encourage everyone to have that kind of attitude. So it's this quote, that you should believe that you can learn and do anything as well as anyone else. And fair call, emphasis on learn and do, but still. All right, so this is a little bit ranty, but you gave me more time, so it's your fault. So another aside on Adele, you can, maybe this is a sign that I sometimes do like a depth first search in my research for a talk rather than a breadth first search. But here we are. So Adele Goldstein also wrote the ENIAC's first technical manual from scratch. And also she kept working after having kids, which was ridiculously rare at the time. Someone described her as sometimes carrying her infant daughter Maddie in her arms and carrying on with her professional career at the same time as enthusiastically embracing new motherhood, which is just pretty, yeah, I'm going to go certified badass. So she wrote the first technical programming reference, which is cool. So back to ENIAC and programming. Did I mention that it was on punch cards and that debugging a program meant actually climbing inside the ENIAC in search of faulty connections? Because that's pretty cool. So this deck was created in about 1969, so much later, as part of a thesis, research thesis. But that's the kind of thing. So also, these programmers were almost entirely forgotten and lost from history. Later on, a computer scientist and historian was told that they were refrigerator ladies, that is, models who were posing in front of the machine just for press photography, but they really weren't. And this kind of just glossing over and rewriting history happens throughout with all minorities. I urge people to look in and do their own research on Indigenous science as well, although we do not have any time to cover that here as well. But these women were pretty damn awesome and prolific. So somehow we went from this kind of an atmosphere. So this is one of the programmers in 1953 saying, it really amazed me that these men were programmers because I thought it was women's work. We got from that to this. How did that happen? Well, the war ended, which was widely considered to have been a good thing. And I would agree there, but it does have a few unintended consequences. It meant that there were a whole bunch of men who came back to their communities and they needed jobs that women had been filling. And while the programming jobs were safe for a while, after all, women hadn't been replacing men in those roles, they were new roles. No soldier returning from the war had the skill set that they did. But after the war, there was such a boom in computing, and there were more jobs than there were qualified men to fill them, qualified people to fill them, I should say. So men and women were pulled in to fill those roles. And then over time, the stereotypes about the field shifted to the point where computer programming became seen as a job better suited to men than women. Instead of a job that was perfect for detail-oriented women who love to create and collaborate and plan, it became a job for geeky, antisocial boys. And then suddenly, new colleges and new training methods opened, and there were lots and lots of applicants for these jobs. And what do you do when there are too many applicants for a job? Well, you use an aptitude test. And here we have a few issues. Access to education is not evenly distributed. Aptitude tests embody privileged masculine characteristics, and personality profiles reinforce the idea that the detached and antisocial programmer being ideal for these roles. And then that created gender biased feedback cycles that then reinforce these stereotypes. It's a little bit like Amazon way back on that earlier slide. This bias towards male programmers wasn't so much a deliberate thing as it was just convenient. A combination of laziness, ambiguity, and traditional male privilege, and the fact that you could use these lazy screening practices and that inadvertently excluded a large number of potential trainees who were female or from other underrepresented minorities. Well, I mean, that just wasn't considered. It wasn't an issue. But the increasing assumption that the average programmer was male did play an increasing role in the establishment of a hyper-masculine programming subculture. Yeah. All right. So this is all a bit doom and gloom, but it's not doom and gloom. What can we actually do about it? Well, there was this Microsoft study. So this is not my stats, but looking at when girls actually lose interest in STEM as they get older. And I mean, I guess the answer is always, but especially there's this middle school cliff. No one really knows why. Is it that there are not enough role models? Is it puberty that girls suddenly become aware that computer science has an image problem a couple of years earlier than boys do, and they opt out? Is it that girls are socialized to be more interested in caring professions? That is, they're allowed to become lawyers, but they should become human rights lawyers, and they should do medicine or something caring and nurturing rather than something lucrative, perhaps. And ultimately, is university just too late to get these girls interested? Have we already lost these kids who have opted out in high school? Because women don't get computer science degrees, there aren't enough qualified women to be software engineers, only counts if you're only looking at people who have degrees. So this is a bit problematic in a few ways. One of the things is that it frames the problem as girls' problems. It's largely intractable. And it lets unis say that, well, it's too late by the time we get to university, so it's not our fault for not doing anything enough, whichever. This last one, I mean, all of these, the idea here is, oh, sorry, the misogyny is also important to remember. But ultimately, these are all ways to fix women. That the reason that women aren't in tech is because there is a problem with women. And if that problem were fixed, if women were fixed, then they would be equally in tech. But that is 100% not the case, right? The solution is never to fix women. If you aren't interested in computer science from a young age, you've missed the boat. That's a lie. In order to work in computer science as a developer, you need a computer science degree. That's also a lie. My undergraduate was an arts degree. I was interested in computers, but not really. My first programming experience was when I was 21. Exactly. It's not true. So as far as you need a university degree to do tech, nearly 50% of professional developers in a Stack Overflow survey, only 50% hold a CS degree. So, I mean, I know I'm speaking to a particular subset of the audience here with CSESOC, and you should all stay in school, kids. Do that assignment, do those readings and things, but it's also not the only way. And anyway, we know that it's a social issue because the rates of women in tech vary substantially from under 10 to more than 30% based on what country you're in. And that's clearly a social thing. If we're looking at the number of women graduating from CS degrees, in some Asian countries, it's more than 50% of your peers in a computer science degree are women. Not the case around the world. All right, so can I do anything to help? I know that's what you're all asking yourself. Well, we can fix this bit. Well, we can't fix it, but let's help with that bit. A little bit of encouragement makes a ridiculous amount of difference as far as girls in school, their interest in tech. So if they're encouraged by their teacher, if they're encouraged by a parent, this makes a really big difference. So engage your kidlets, all of them, anyone, because STEM's pretty cool, or at least I should hope so, given you're listening to this talk. Another one is you should read this study. It's a great study. I refer to it as the plant study. This one is saying that make sure that your atmosphere that you're actually doing learning, teaching, work in is something that you want to be in. So this study found that changing the objects in a computer science classroom from those considered stereotypical computer science techie, so there was a Star Trek poster, video games, to objects that weren't considered stereotypical, a nature poster and phone books, yes, phone books, was sufficient to boost female undergraduates' interest in computer science to the level of their male peers. And that's kind of important. That's kind of really important because you wouldn't think that a phone book would make that much difference, but it absolutely does. And the other thing was that female undergraduates preferred these phone books, but so did the male undergraduates. Okay, I'm not sure it was the phone book specifically, but not only in an office setting did this make these college grads more excited about working at that office potentially if they had nature posters rather than Star Trek, but so everyone did. So get a plant, get some nature posters. If you can find phone books, get some phone books, but really, really just get some plants, please get some plants. The other thing is you should try and encourage kids, to get involved in extracurricular activities. I'm not really looking, but I just saw in the Discord a link. I will share the slides and links to the readings as well. So get your kids involved in extracurricular activities if you can. Get your siblings, your cousins, whatever. doesn't really matter what it is, but something that's fun to do is ridiculously important so that they can get encouragement from outside of the traditional areas, which evidently aren't doing great at the moment. And the other issue is we need to fix that bit at the end, because we know that that's not a nice place to end up in. The pipeline problem I've heard described as a sewerage issue that ends in a cesspit of sewerage. So we need to do something about that too. But that is not my chance, not my talk for right now. We'll figure that out later. So yeah, questions. I'll have some tea. At me on Twitter. I don't know. Like and subscribe. Is that what I say?
Yeah, that's the thing to say, I think.
Smash that bell.
Smash that bell, exactly. Cool. Thank you, Nikki. Sorry, I didn't hear the questions part until like 20 seconds later. So awesome. Wow, you said the talk was going to be a lot of shouting, and I can say you've totally lived up to that expectation. But good shouting as well.
Good shouting.
Good shouting.
Sad shouting, and also not completely pessimistic shouting, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. I think
buy some plants. Do you have plants in that office there? I see you with an open door.
No, I don't have plants because it's also not my office.
It's just petition whoever's office it is to get plants.
I'll raise that with the university. We have one. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go the Q&A sort of session style. Given that there's not many people in the Discord voice channel, I think we can continue using YouTube as our pushing out talking sort of platform. Although I'll be watching the Discord text channel for questions, and we'll also be able to slide it as well. And also YouTube chat or anywhere else there. So moving forward, the first question that we've got, who's from, is where can I get phone books?
Yeah, I mean, that is a hard question to answer nowadays. Back in the day, I used phone books as a low-cost standing desk. So I actually have a phone book propping up my monitor right now. They used to be a day when they would be delivered to a whole bunch of apartment blocks, none of whom actually cared or picked them up. So there was one day that was just gold mine for walking around and collecting phone books. I don't know. I haven't seen that day in a while, so I'm not sure. Keep us posted.
That's so great. Cool. Another question, and this is the top voted question we have so far, is a big hitter. How can we at UNSW be more inclusive? What changes could we make both socially and formally in terms of how we run courses and how we socialize with each other?
Other than buying plants,
yes.
I feel like I sound like I'm a mole for the gardening industry or something, but I'm really not. I think it's such an open-ended question.
Yeah,
everything. You need to do everything.
Yeah.
Attending this talk was a thing. Good job. Speaking out when you see something that's not right. Really small things that play a difference when you wouldn't necessarily think so. Like making sure that you're not using gendered language or pronouns when you're talking about model programmers that you want to hire, or I don't know, that sort of thing. All of those things really do make a difference, but not a big difference. They're enough to help stop people feeling like they should be excluded, but they're not enough to make a difference to actively welcome and engage people who already feel disenfranchised. That's a much harder thing to do. If you are, if you're able to volunteer at outreach activities that help with this, then do that. If you're able to help out, even just giving tech help to charities who help with access to education, do that. I don't know. Hold people accountable for not caring, I guess. If I think back to some of the early lectures that I went to, if I'd had more confidence, I would have spoken up about some things that were just not bad, but a bit dodge. And if you find yourself in a position of privilege where you know you fit and you know you're not going to get any repercussions, you speaking out to save someone else having to do that is a really good thing. Hang on. This is another thing. It's almost like I had slides prepared for this, but also I forgot. When you find yourself in a group environment or at work, there's a thing called minority tax, which is really bloody hard. And it's this idea that minorities are both underrepresented and also overburdened when it comes to things like giving talks or sitting on panels or committees. When it's widely considered that if you're applying for a role and you happen to be a woman, having at least one of your interviewers be a woman is a good thing. But if you don't have, like, if your work's ratio is highly skewed, then you are overburdening the women that you hire because they're taking disproportionately more interviews than the men, and they so have less time to work. And so this is a good thing, right? It's a good idea to have representation in interviews or on panels, but it's also burdening your minorities. So it's really hard. I don't know.
Cool. And yeah, we're not looking for you to be the be all end all. Please solve all the problems, Nicky, and tell us how to live. But that would be awesome if you could.
Look, I'll try maybe next week. Actually, can I
yes,
add another
yes.
thing?
Of course.
There's a talk called Being Glue, and this deals with the concept of non-promotable tasks and the fact that women disproportionately volunteer for them more often, even knowing that they are not going to be rewarded for them. I will find some readings and add them to the group or the chat or wherever this ends up.
Yeah, for sure.
But trying to avoid like setting up structures so that things like taking notes or organizing events for a group of people is rostered fairly rather than letting someone volunteer for it is a good way of minimizing that minority tax as best you can.
Yeah, cool. There's two other questions, both quite similar. So one, we've already touched on this a little bit, is what is one thing that we each as individuals can do to improve diversity, inclusion, tech, which I feel like you answered in a lot of slides, but did you have, yes?
One other thing is that if you, a whole bunch of tech events are really fun to go to, in the before and hopefully after time. And a bunch of people, it's really easy to make people feel specifically included if you specifically include them. So if there's a talk on machine learning happening and you think it might be interesting, then go to someone in your class and say, hey, I'm going to this. Do you want to come too? Let's meet up beforehand, grab a coffee, and we'll go from there. Because it's that getting to the event that is really tricky sometimes for people to be like, oh yeah, but it's not really targeted at me. It's not really my thing. But if you're getting coffee beforehand anyway, then you may as well go. So I don't want to say trick a minority peer into coming along to an event with you, but do that, but in better wording.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, some people are just like, they don't want to go to events, but like if there's peer pressure, they will actually go.
And some of them might even like it. I bet a lot of them would like it.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is kind of personal to whoever who asked this. I want to get more involved in helping fix diversity in tech, but I'm scared people will think I'm too political.
I mean, it is a political issue in that everything is a political issue. I hope, okay, so the first thing I did in this talk, actually, the first thing I should have done was an acknowledgement of country, but I didn't. I should have done that. The first thing I did was try to explain that I'm still learning, clearly, and this is my understanding of the problem, and that I want to learn. If you take that that open ethos and turn up and show that you're keen and that you're willing to listen and that you're willing to do the crappy grunt work, the stacking the dishwasher version of helping fix diversity rather than the standing on the podium handing out novelty oversized checks version, which if there is just that version, I would love to sign up for that, but it turns out it's not. Then it won't be a problem, and you will be welcomed, I would say. I don't know anyone who has had someone genuinely say, hey, I want to help with this initiative, or hey, I want to find out if there's an initiative to support blah, who's been knocked back. There's some really good ally resources. More generally, the ADA initiative was a program that ran for a couple of years, 5 or 10 years ago. And that has really good resources on how to be a good ally. One of my favorites is magical man sprinkles. So I will now let you all in on the magical man sprinkles tip. This is when you find yourself in a meeting or a class or a discussion and you feel like your suggestions aren't being heard. You have an ally that you have agreed beforehand is aware of this, and they will essentially repeat your idea, adding their magical man sprinkles so that it can be heard and acknowledged. Whether or not you want that person to then give you credit, most of the time it doesn't actually, that's not necessarily the aim, although it's bloody good if it does happen. Yeah, add more magical man sprinkles. And even if you don't have someone say, hey, there's this thing, can you be aware of what I'm saying and make sure that it doesn't actually get ignored? If you notice someone being ignored in a meeting, then speak up for them. It's not hard to say, hey, have we heard from that person? Or sorry, I keep cutting you off. Sorry, you keep getting cut off. Yeah, sorry, that was a rambling answer, but hopefully useful. The ADO initiative's got really good stuff.
Yeah, that will definitely make someone feel a lot better, especially the minority if they get ignored. Okay, cool. And
I should say it's not
sorry.
deliberate. Sorry, you get more ranting. It's not like deliberate ignored or deliberately cut off. My background is actually my undergrad is in linguistics, just in terms of who, and I do realize the irony of me cutting you off and saying this, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But just based on how communication works is very different. It's a socially learnt phenomena, and women have different rates for how long the silence is between sentences and how we interpret when the next person's turn is. So it's been a while since I read this, but in general, women wait longer between sentences, and men have a shorter turn. So if I'm saying a sentence, then there's a pause, and then there's another sentence, men may mistakenly come in then thinking that I'm done talking, but I'm like, why did you just cut me off? Like, come on. Except not, because women are used to it. But as a dude, you can step in and say, oh, hang on, let's go back there.
Okay, I'm waiting for a while for you to finish.
I was wondering. Yes. And okay, this is also, here we go, I'm cutting you off again. And this has also been exacerbated by having so much communication via Zoom or whatever video conferencing of choice is. Like, is this a lag that's a real lag, or is it an artificial lag? Did I actually stop talking, or did I just cut out? So there's a bit of like, and that awkwardness is the sort of conversational work that people do all the time subconsciously, but just made harder. So I don't know, take your Zoom, oh, sorry, did I cut you off? Ambiguity back into real meat-based discussions when we get to have them.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have those one of those awkward moments. To be like, did it cut off or did it just stop talking? Okay, Shay, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, sure. So moving for a second back to some very trivial sort of questions. One of the questions we have, which is a recurring question every week for our AMAs, different series of guests, is pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh, absolute yes.
Oh my gosh.
Strong yes.
And you have a doctorate, therefore you must be correct.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I'm very excited that you said that. And there was actually quite a few people who voted for that. Another question which has been asked is that, and I'm not sure, you can choose to not answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but one of the questions has been, what discrimination, if any, have you experienced as a female in STEM?
Oh, I mean, a lot, but also not a lot. I mean, it's really tricky. So, I mean, there's definitely like the low level, everyday, casual discrimination, as it may be. The like, I'm in a meeting and I get cut off, or I'm meeting someone and they assume that I'm the non-technical co-founder, or just like, I don't know, normal fun things. I've been pretty lucky in that I'm stubborn, and in that I came relatively late, not really that late to computer science, but I'd done an undergraduate degree, and then I got excited by computing. So after my undergrad, I decided to enroll in computer science, and I said, if I failed every subject, I just wouldn't put it on my CV. I would pretend that I was traveling, and I would go and apply for the jobs that you can get with an arts degree. But as it turned out, I didn't fail any of those classes. It was bloody hard, but I kept going and kept going from there. And I benefited a lot from a lot of really supportive colleagues and peers. And I hope that I've been able to support a lot of people in turn. Part of that was why I helped found the Girls Programming Network, to help sort of make that path into computer science a little bit easier for girls who don't know what tech could be, to give them a sort of authentic experience with technology, and also give them experience where they are not an outsider, or they don't feel like the odd one out in a room. They're in a room, like we fill the undergraduate labs of Sydney Uni and a bunch of other unis across Australia with women. And that's really powerful, to feel like you belong. But it definitely does starkly contrast to, I mean, the experience of like wrestling with my first tech assignment. I was sitting in the undergraduate labs and I had like a crowd of 8 dudes trying to help me do this assignment, and I'm like, I just want to code, can you all leave me be? It's not malicious, but it does make you feel like you don't belong. And I think that's the most pervasive issue that you can all help with, that things that you might do, or you might see other people doing as welcoming behavior, it doesn't always come across as such. Yeah, let's go with that.
That's a good answer. Thanks for that. I want to touch base because there's been a few questions about, GPN and your work with Grok Learning. So particularly your role in founding both of those. Traditionally the startup stories we hear, the cool tech companies, doing AI, blockchain, cryptocurrency startups, all the cool stuff, right? But here you are starting an edutech startup. What was that about? What was the idea behind that?
How do you know it isn't run off blockchain AI? You don't know that.
Oh no!
I could be like a DL chatbot with a deep fake front. I may not even exist. Like, this is the real startup.
Yeah. So the question being like, what is GPN? Why did it start? What is Grok Learning? Why did it start? Like, why are they independent? And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's roll the clock back. I was doing my PhD in natural language processing, and I was helping out with the National Computer Science School at the time. And there were a few of us who started this girls programming initiative girls programming network initiative to sort of, as I said, to help give, we initially focused clearly on high school girls, to give them a taste of real world computing so that they could actually make a decision as to whether or not this is something that they wanted to do or not. So when I was at school, we didn't really do computing. I did do tech because it was a required subject in like year 7 and 8, but my tech teacher was also my cricket coach. So you can imagine that. I remember very distinctly one of the assignments was, here is a printout of a flyer, recreate this flyer in Word. And yeah, fun. Anyway, so GPN was like, let's get these girls in and we'll take apart a computer and like poke at it and be like, this is the hard drive. How cool is that? And we'll put it back together and it'll work. Or we'll learn to write a really simple chatbot in Python, or we'll make a clone of Flappy Bird in Pygame, and just do really fun things that you can do in the space of a day. Or, I mean, we started it as a weekly activity, but it works better as a one-day workshop, to really just have fun and have that feeling of being welcome and included and not unusual. Like, this is normal to be a woman in computer science in this atmosphere, so that you can then go on to not be terrified of making that choice to commit to a university degree. So I was really getting involved in outreach. I should have been doing my PhD, but procrastination, the most powerful force in the universe. And we started, I was helping out a lot with the NCSS challenge as well. And we started getting a lot of teachers saying, look, the NCSS challenge is fantastic. So I should say, for those of you who don't know, it's a 5-week programming competition that requires no assumed knowledge. So students learn to program as they compete. And it's essentially, if you let teachers, let us take the heavy lifting in terms of content delivery and teaching the hard parts of programming. And I say hard parts, there's plenty of other hard parts, but the bits that teachers, my cricket coach, didn't necessarily have a good background in, and will support you in learning that with a whole bunch of tutors as well. So teachers loved this, but they'd say, oh, look, the timing doesn't work for me. The year 7s have camp, and can we do it over 8 weeks, not 5? And can you teach HTML and JavaScript, and does it come in black? And they kept wanting more things, and we have to say, look, this isn't my day job. I should actually probably be doing that thesis that I'm ignoring. But it turns out I'm not very good at saying no to teachers. Both my parents are ex-teachers, and teachers work bloody hard, and they don't get a lot of respect, and they need all the help that anyone could possibly give them. So the 4 of us who started Grok, James, who was my PhD supervisor, Tara, who's an astroinformatician, Tim, who was doing his PhD at the desk sort of down from me, and me, we said, well, let's just do it. Let's found a startup. Let's start saying yes to these things, and start helping teachers more. a lot of work. We took a year off our PhDs. It's very difficult to try and juggle that sort of thing of startup and a PhD, but Tim and I both managed and both eventually graduated. Yeah, that's the long and rambling version of how we went. It's mostly because teachers bullied us into saying yes. I'm going to go with that.
Cool. The follow-up question from that, so there's a two-part question, but I wanted to ask the first part and then the second part so we didn't forget about it, because I know I would forget about it.
I do tend to ramble, yes, I know.
Is what made you go from that sort of work to your position now, which, you know, you're doing product management and work at big tech. So they seem like very different jobs and different fields and different work capacities and work like responsibilities. I guess.
I joined Google for the juice bar. I was very clear with my team about this. The juice bar, the free lunch, and the other perks. So it was only fitting then that my first day was the first day of mandatory work from home. And I have yet to experience proper office life at Google. I feel I should have put it in the contract, really. No, I love EduTech, and I'm so proud of what we've achieved with Grok and continue to achieve. But look, after working in the same space and with the same team for more than a decade, I just wanted something that was a bit more, well, a bit different, to see if I could. Like, there's a lot of people who want to try, like, who work in big tech, who are like, oh, I really want to try startup to see if I can, to see what it's like, because I don't want to at age 60 look back and say, oh, I really wish I'd tried it, what if it had worked, what if, but I'd already done the startup thing, and I have a toddler, and I really like the relaxed and chill version, where big tech, like Google, is not going to fail because I have to take a week off because my kid made me sick. Like, I don't have to feel guilty about only working 9 to 5 and not continuing to work at night and on the weekend. And I'm not saying that Grok had bad work-life balance, but more that, like, when you're doing it for the kids and for the teachers, and like, the danger of doing something that you're ridiculously passionate about is that passion just takes over your life, and there's nothing like having a toddler to undo that, even if you don't want it to.
Yeah, cool. Kai, did you want to ask the next question? Also, that was a really
sure.
great answer. Thanks, Nicky.
Yeah. Okay. So someone asked, I've had pretty terrible experience as a minority in tech. Should I switch fields?
No. No, I don't. I mean, you should chat to me later one-on-one, and I can find out more about you, and we can see if we can fix things. But no, like, tech is terrible and a shit show, and there is pervasive misogyny and racism, but that's also in every other field. We just don't talk about it. And that's really sad and terrible. But at least there's movement in tech at the moment to start talking about that. I mean, tech likes metrics. We're good at tracking metrics. If you start looking into other fields like medicine and surgery, there's horrendous issues there. I mean, I'm not even going to get started on politics at the moment, or ever. I'm not going to say that it gets better in tech. I hope it will. I'm not going to say that you should just stick it out and then things will magically improve. I hope they do. But gosh, at least in tech, you're paid well. And there are lots and lots of jobs. So if you end up working somewhere that is not good to you, you can find another job and you can make noise about it, and you can hopefully find somewhere better. That wasn't as optimistic as I hoped it to be, but I think it is, right? There are some really, really great workspaces and groups of people doing fantastic things, and being a minority is not a life sentence. Like it's a benefit to communities to have diversity, and it's a detriment to those that don't realize that it's a benefit to them. And I hope you find somewhere that appreciates you and helps support you and lets you grow. Keep looking.
Wow. I think that was one of the most inspiring answers so far. Thanks for that. Okay, next question. Have you or how did you deal with imposter syndrome, particularly as a woman?
All right, I'm going to give two answers here. I am still dealing with it, and I don't know. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Hang on, we've got a special guest joining us. All right.
Hello.
Alex, can you say hi?
Oh, hello.
Good job. Oh, don't press those buttons. Alex, how does mummy deal with imposter syndrome? By pretending it doesn't exist. All right. There you go, Alex. Go watch some Bluey. Watch some more Bluey. So yeah, like I think you have to do a little bit of double speak here, or double think here. All right, give that back to me. All right, we've got a special guest for the rest of the Q&A.
That's okay.
Okay. This is what diversity in tech looks like. Snot. Oh. Okay. Yeah, okay. Daddy will go get you some milk.
We can come back to this in later.
No.
Okay.
We're good.
All right, okay.
Milk and Bluey will fix everything. If you haven't watched Bluey, you all should watch Bluey. The episodes are 7 minutes and they are a delight. Don't worry the fact that they're aimed at 4-year-olds. It's fine. So imposter syndrome kind of involves like just telling the part of your brain that you're an imposter to shut up repeatedly. And there's no way that I've found to get it to stop properly. It's just continuous. Like at one point I realized I've got a PhD. There's no other credential I can get that proves that I belong here. I should really stop. But because I was working in the education space, I'm like, oh, maybe I should go and get a teaching degree so that I can really prove that I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, no, because then I would feel like I need to spend 10 years in the classroom in order to show that I really knew what I was doing. And by then it's 15 years down the track. What am I doing? The thing is, you've just got to, on the one hand, be like, no, I know exactly what I'm talking about and I deserve to be here, and just keep telling this part of your brain to shut up. I'm not very good at that. It's a skill that I'm still learning, but I do trust other people. And there are other people that I know and I value their opinion and I trust their judgment, and they think I belong here. And on some days, that's enough. And I know a lot of people and I think they belong in tech and they belong here and they trust me. So I feel like I pay it forward in that respect. It's not a fun, exciting answer, but yeah, just keep yelling at your brain to shut up.
I will be honest, that's the first time I've ever heard an answer like that. It's also like a really good answer. Like that's a very unique take, which I appreciate, because a lot of the you get the standard response like, oh, you can do it, and that's it.
There's some great oh, hang on, I'm accidentally moving my slides. I could probably stop presenting. There's some great, I don't even know how to use that. Some great research that found that like standing like this improves your self-confidence, or like this by something endorphins, testosterone, something, and therefore you'll be more confident. So before that talk or that job interview, go and stand and take up space and stretch. And then there's a really popular TED talk on it, and then it was found to be utter bullshit. So I don't know, do whatever works. Placebos are great. Choose a placebo that you like and stick with it for a while.
Next question that we have is a pretty interesting question. Besides diversity, what are some other big social issues that we have in tech?
Oh, I mean, it's tricky because I've framed most of these issues as a diversity issue, but like diversity is far reaching, and I wouldn't just define it as like gender or race or but like socioeconomic background, cultural background, all sorts of things. So one big challenge that we have at the moment is ethics in tech. Is it ethical to use the tech that we have to do things? Things that we're already doing, things that we could do. I remember listening to a podcast a couple of years ago about a startup that has drones that are very high level geostationary drones, essentially, and they take super high quality images of areas, which is a thing. And they're just there and they record these images. So if your car gets stolen, you can just wind the tape back and follow it and find out where it is. It seems like a good, useful thing to have, certainly useful for the police, certainly useful for the person whose car was stolen. But what else is it going to be used for? Is it an ethical thing to have this information and not know what it's going to be used for in the future? Is it a sensible decision to have your entire medical history available to doctors? Yes, absolutely, because like as someone who has walked between different medical departments of the same hospital to try and get a printout, like either a physical or a CD copy of a scan that I need to take to another part of the same hospital, like, yes, please just share the data between you. This would be so much better. But also, do I really want this? Do I trust this? Do I trust what this is going to be in the future? I don't know, probably not. Do I want my cool AI to be used by the military? Not really, personally. It's not my sort of vibe. We've got a lot of things to wrestle with. I don't have any answers.
Yeah. And I apologize for about to hear you another question that was brought up. Given some of the most recent like ethical conversations about certain companies and AI, what are your thoughts on that? And it's okay if you don't want to have thoughts on that.
I have so many thoughts on that. So here's the thing. I'm not even sure what thoughts I'm allowed to say. Isn't it weird being employed by a big corporation? I don't know. But I can say that we all know that there is bias in algorithms, or maybe you skipped the talk beforehand. You should view those slides again. As someone with a background in natural language processing, like, okay, so hear me out here. My thesis was on named entity structure. So these are like proper nouns, right? And it turns out that there's structure in these. If we're talking about the University of Sydney, Sydney is a location, and you can get all of this information out from this corpus. But it wasn't originally annotated in the corpus. And that initial corpus, which is where we get all of our training data, is that I use, is called the Penn Tree Bank. And that's like the state of the art, what all of the results for the natural language processing parsing area are based on. This is news text from the I'm going to get this wrong, and it's going to be really embarrassing, 1970s and 80s ish, maybe even before then. So there are things like a judge being like shake 'em down judge name, talking about how someone was sent away from the court because they were wearing a skirt that was too short. There's documents, like there are newspaper articles about people being lynched based on their racial identities. This is not a happy corpus. This is a corpus that has inherent bias. And if we're using this corpus to train our chatbots and our AI things, of course there's going to be bias. And we need to do better, but it's really expensive and it's really hard. And we know that this ethical problem is going to be in any AI that we use that we make by training on data that is real, because turns out that the real world is, at times not a great place. Definitely a place that has inherent systemic a bias and challenges. So I don't know what to do with that. You don't want to make up artificial data because it just doesn't work. We've seen time and time again with chatbots that learn based on what people talk to them. There were some great ones on Twitter. I think they usually become Nazis within like 20 minutes. The internet is a horrible place. People are horrible, and that doesn't give us the right to excuse our algorithmic biases or our endemic ethical issues. It does mean that it's understandable that these holes that we've created for ourselves, but it's our responsibility to do better. I don't know how.
No, that's a really good answer. You continue to amaze me. That's all I'm going to say to that. Next question, which is like a bit lighter.
Is there another one on like pineapple?
There is, but this one is also. Okay,
good.
Did you have a question about pineapple? Did you want to answer that question?
I don't know. Again? Can I pose like the banana bread or cake?
What is that a question? Bread or cake?
Bread or cake? Is banana bread a bread or a cake?
No, bread. It's a bread.
Oh. My kidlet disagrees with you.
Oh.
Definitely thinks it's cake. I'm just giving a data point. I'm not saying that anyone's right.
Speaking of bread, there was a question asked a few weeks ago. So when a loaf of bread is sliced, right? It's a sliced loaf of bread. It's got several pieces of bread. Is that a recursive sandwich? What are your thoughts?
Ooh. I mean, it is a sandwich of sandwiches, I guess. But okay, I mean, I feel like I have here a sandwich that is just bread. So I feel like I have to say yes, given that this is right here as a snack. I'm going to go with yes, strong yes.
Cool. Is cereal a soup?
No.
Why not?
Because the process of soup is one, like cereal is cereal and can be enjoyed even without milk. You add the milk to it later, whereas soup is created as a liquid.
Do you put your cereal in your milk?
Of course.
Whoa.
And I will fight anyone who disagrees. Who would add cereal to the milk?
Yeah, I actually don't. A good question. Is gingerbread bread?
Oh, no, definitely not.
Then why is it called gingerbread?
I don't know. In German, it's Lebkuchen, so it's cake.
Do you speak German?
I try. But like gingerbread is German, so or Dutch, depending. But I don't know Dutch. It's basically the same.
Know that. I did not know that.
I have an arts degree. I learned languages at school because I could get marks for talking. Like, how cool is that? I love being lazy.
And you're very good at talking, if I do say so.
And then I just kept studying at university because, I don't know what else to do. And then I was like, gee, maybe I should do something that'll get me a job. Let's try this computer science thing. Actually, no, I enrolled in a law degree and then I went, oh, no, this is not for me. Let's try the scary thing, the computing thing that I thought that I wouldn't maybe do well at, but I did it anyway because it was hard. You should do things that are hard if you want.
Speaking of hard questions, what is the best vegetable and what is the worst vegetable?
Oh, capsicum is the worst vegetable. It's the worst, definitely. It tastes wrong, and then there's the taste of wrongness in your mouth forever. It's bad. If you cook things with capsicum, everything tastes like capsicum. Definitely the worst. The best. I do like eggplant.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard someone say eggplant is the best vegetable.
It's really versatile, surprisingly so. It's great to be baked. It's delicious in a stir fry. It's a good, substantive vegetable. Plus, you can make a ridiculously delicious dip. Here you go. I'm going to give you the instructions right now. You get your eggplant, several of them. You burn the crap out of them by roasting them on a open fire, on a barbecue, whatever. The entire outside goes black and gross. You peel the skin off, you squeeze all the juice out, you add oil and salt and you mash it. Then you add more oil and salt and you mash it and it is amazing. You just keep stirring.
Can we do a cooking stream with you at some point?
Yes, maybe. So long as it's all eggplant based, I guess. No capsicum allowed.
No capsicum allowed. Cool. Kai, do you want to ask the question that's been highlighted?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Someone told me to ask you, what's Santa Tracker?
What's Santa Tracker? So Santa Tracker is a thing that I work on a little bit now as my actual job. My partner Sam also works on it. So it's Christmas, right? And you're a kid or an adult, and you want to know where Santa Tracker is, or where Santa is right now. Santa could be over Europe. Santa could be over Africa. I don't know. It's Christmas Eve and Santa's due sometime soon. You can go to santatracker.google.com and find out where Santa is right now. Well, spoiler, right now Santa is at the North Pole. But Santa also has a bunch of fun games and slightly educational things and games that are fun to play. The side note here is that Santa Tracker is a web app. It's made using some pretty cool, funky web tech. And Sam is a DevRel, and he gets to talk about how the site is built and how it showcases state-of-the-art web stuff.
Just interjecting real quick. What's DevRel?
DevRel is thank you, developer relations. So it's his job to like talk to developers and convince them to use good web tech, TM. So yeah, you can check it out. Check out it's open sourced, and you can learn how to track Santa, and also how
And you can
Polymer.
find Santa.
Yeah.
Cool.
There are also some of the games are pretty fun, and I'm definitely not recommending this as a thing to do for any like high school students whose school might block YouTube or other Flash games, but doesn't block the Google domain. Just saying.
Yes, of course. We would never endorse such things.
No.
Cool. Another really good question is that given you've done many different things, you've done the startup route, you've done the academia route, you're now doing the big tech route. What are your thoughts on like each of them, and like what would you? I would say the question's like what would you suggest, but like I feel like there's pros and cons of each one, right?
Yeah. There are definite pros and cons of each one. Academia is great because you get to do stuff that you care about sometimes, and it's terrible because it is a ridiculously hard life. If I wanted a good position at a university, I would essentially need to do a postdoc for a couple of years overseas at least, and that's really hard if I'm also trying to do the whole family thing. It's a friend of mine, her partner had just gotten a job at Google actually, and a couple of months later she got a postdoc in Sweden, and so they moved to Sweden, and her partner gave up his job because that was the only option, and you have to go overseas and you have to prove your worth in another institution before you can come back. And the number of roles in academia is much fewer than the number of PhD graduates. And oh gosh, it's tricky. But you do also get to work on really cool stuff, and you get to define what it is that you're working on, and you get funding to do it. You get to be inspiring for students. You get to do a bunch of like mentoring that I really care about. You get to teach, which I really enjoy. In startup land, there's a whole lot of existential angst that comes with doing the thing that you want to do. There's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of freedom. Freedom to fail, certainly, but also freedom to pick what it is that you're doing as you fail. I mean, sometimes you don't fail. It becomes trickier once you start growing the startup, whether you take on VC funding and you've got those responsibilities, whether you're bootstrapped and you have a runway of this much money and you've got employees, and employees want to get paid every month. My gosh. It's much easier when you don't pay yourself. I mean, living is not the easy part there, but you also have a lot of support from the startup community, which in Sydney is amazing. And there are all of these opportunities to go and talk about what you're doing, and you get to make a real difference in the area that you're doing. Like I love the fact that as part of Grok Learning, it wouldn't exist if we hadn't started it, and I get to feel awesome about the work that it's doing even after I'm not really involved anymore. Like, it's fantastic. Big tech, oh my gosh, I can launch a product and have millions of people look at it that day. Like, that kind of reach is phenomenal. Sure, it's not my product. I mean, it could be. As a PM, I get to make it mine. But it's a trade-off of whether it's the thing that you're really excited and passionate about, or whether it's just something pays the bills, which is also totally fine, right? there's a lot of like, oh, you should follow your passion and then you'll never work in your life. I think that's bullshit. I do not encourage people to follow their passion, because then their passion becomes their job, and their job is their life. It occasionally works out well, but like, oh gosh, it gets exhausting. If your passion is knitting or mountain biking or, I don't know, shouting at the TV, it is totally okay to have a regular job and then continue your passion as your passion. And that's fine. Like, that is entirely good. In fact, work-life balance, when those things are separate things, is much easier to maintain. So I'm really lucky at the moment. The project that I'm working on is in the open source space. It's something that I care about a lot. It's really important. And I get to work on something that I care about that's going to make a difference, and also get paid to do it. And at some point I'll get a juice bar. I don't know. But I could be working on a
push for the juice bar. It's the most important thing.
Yeah. But I could be working on something else, right? I could have been assigned to a team where the job was to get people to click on ads more, and I would have to be okay with that, or leave and find another job, which is also fine. They all have benefits and disadvantages. I don't know. Try one, then try another one.
Cool. Awesome. Good answer. Kai, do you want to ask the next question?
Okay. I want to pick this question.
Okay,
so,
sure.
What role do you believe men should have in helping improve diversity, whether it be women or other underrepresented groups in tech?
Oh, all
Just
right.
a small question.
So, I've spoken to some men who are like, oh, I don't want to take up space. That woman clearly is passionate about this diversity, equity, inclusion thing. She cares about it. I'll just let her do it, because I don't want to step on her toes. That's bullshit. I mean, it's well-intentioned bullshit, but it's still bullshit, right? This comes back to the minority tax. If the only people who are caring about diversity are the people who are negatively impacted by a lack of diversity, then you've got a problem. And men really need to step up and say, hey, I'm in this position of privilege. I'm far less likely to be fired for speaking out. I'm far more likely to be paid more than my female or other minority counterparts. I'm far more likely to not face any repercussions about kicking up a stink about what that person just said. It would be really nice to not have to invite men to the table, but to have men show up at the table and say, what can I do? Or in fact, even better, to say, I want to do this. Is this a good thing for me to do? Because if you're only doing what we tell you to, then that still involves me doing the thinking of what it is that you should be doing. You will at times, I'm sure, get some pushback from someone saying like, oh, you're a dude. Why are you helping run women in tech scholarship? And you can be like, well, have you heard of this thing called the minority tax? I'm trying to avoid it. And there are absolutely some initiatives and spaces that currently are and probably should remain specific for people who identify as a particular minority. But there's plenty of work to be done that you can absolutely champion. So please do.
Wow, yeah, that sounds really good. What are some examples of gender diversity being an important part of product design in tech? Maybe related to your Google job.
Okay. Oh, these ones aren't related to my Google job, but well, I mean, other than product design. But okay, so when I was born, I had a heart condition. One of my valves in my heart is supposed to go like 90 degrees. It does not. It's lazy. Yeah, it's crap. So I've been interested in artificial hearts all of my life. Now, there was a French company 5-ish years ago that came out with this new model, like new design for an artificial heart that was really, really promising, because turns out there aren't enough hearts for a transplant list. It's complicated. You all should be donors. Get that donor card checked. So this artificial heart only worked in 70% of men's bodies and 10% of women's bodies, just because of the sizing of it. And at the time, they had no plans to make a smaller sized version for women. So there's a factor of product design literally killing women. Seatbelts. Initially, seatbelts in cars were only tested on male crash test dummies. So they strangled and killed women and children. And the airbags similarly, like, snapped kids' necks. It was bad. And it was only like in the last, I don't remember the dates, but like 10 years, someone fact check me, please, that the standard, like that it was required for Australian cars to be crash tested using both average male and female bodies. That's not cool. Another example that's maybe less urgent, is that when I was a kid, we got a PlayStation, which was amazing. And the very first like voice controlled game with a PlayStation was like an army, some kind of a fighting game. And the voice commands 100% did not work for me. They worked for my brother, but not for me, unless I spoke really low and then they worked. And I'm like, well, that's cool. See earlier, training sets and data. There are so many examples. Apple's watch, Apple's health, sorry, not the watch, that like the health app was released, and it was touted to be the ultimate health app, the only thing that you will need to track your health. And there was no way of tracking a menstrual cycle, which is, a thing that happens to women quite regularly and that we all like to track. Like, it's like, did you not talk to a single woman? Did you not, sure, launch a thing, but don't say that this is the only thing you need to, it now supports that, but there was a bit of a backlash to say that it has everything you could ever possibly need, asterisk, assuming you are a dude.
Oh, that sounds terrible, but I'm glad that's getting better now. At least they added it.
Yeah. I think that companies more generally are facing a bit more of a loud backlash for doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
I hope they are.
We have a few final questions before we wrap up soon. One of them being, extending on the earlier question about men and diversity, what can we do particularly in a university setting as university students? And I think we've touched on this a little bit, but yeah.
One thing that I always found useful was asking more questions in lectures. If you, in a bunch of my subjects, I was the only woman in the classroom. And if you are the only representative of a minority in that space, you represent that minority, right? It's not just Nikki asking a dumb question, it's women asking a dumb question. I can't believe women didn't know that. And even if the question is totally fine and normal, and you should all ask questions, because just ask questions all the time. There are no dumb questions, really. You should just do it. But that anxiety, and it's It's not cool. So ask questions always, because other people may not, like if you normalize asking questions more generally, then that helps. As university students, I don't know, call out bullshit, talk to your little siblings and cousins and stuff. Once you get into the workforce, normalize things like talking about your salary, both to your peers and to your little siblings and your cousins and things, because we get paid a ludicrous amount for something that's, to be honest, not that hard. Like, we're not carrying boulders up a hill. Anyone can do this. They just need to learn, and anyone is capable of learning. And encourage people any way you know how. I don't know.
Cool. And the second last question that we had was, what advice would you give to university students who don't know what they want to do after graduating, given that you've experienced multiple different areas of the workforce?
Pick one and change. I wouldn't worry about it. I don't know. Like, tech is a fantastic industry in that if you train, I don't know, if you train as a train driver, for want of a better counterexample, and all of the positions are filled, then you're out of luck. Like, you can't drive trains from your home. If you're skilled in tech and you have an idea, which, like, all of us who interact with technology on a daily basis and get frustrated by technology, that frustration, that should be ideas, right? Either I could do better than this, or I should tell them how to fix it, or why are we even doing this at all? All of those are ideas. If you've got a bit of a tech background, you can turn that idea into its own job. Like, that's the cool thing about startups. You're literally creating jobs, which is really powerful. There are also lots of companies hiring, and tech isn't going away anytime soon, nor is it being outsourced. It turns out that there is a solid employment opportunity and the ability to create your own job. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Just try something and then change.
Cool. Kai, do you want to read the next question?
Okay, so some people like to know how to reach out to you if they want to have a conversation.
Yes. My name is Nicky Ringland, and it was on my slides, or it'll probably be on this thing. And I am Nicky Ringland on Twitter, and all of the socials, probably. I don't know. I'm also in the CSE SOC Discord, which I can't promise to be super attentive to, but I will be there eventually, occasionally, and I'll get notifications, and I can absolutely talk to you and point you to other people if you've got questions, or I don't know, just we can yell at the void of bias in algorithms. Yeah. Ping me.
Cool. Final question is, what are your thoughts on Tim Tams?
Oh, I think they're overrated. I really do. That answer shocked you so much you turned into a dog. I know, as someone who loves dark chocolate, milk chocolate is just like.
What about dark chocolate Tim Tams?
So the dark chocolate Tim Tams are okay, but they're still too sweet. I will take mint slice over Tim Tams any day. I think that's a much better ratio of like sweetness to chocolate.
Yeah. Also, I just realized I totally lied when I said last question. Actual last question, and this is something that we've been trying to do, ask everybody who comes in to talk to us about anything. What should we have asked you?
Oh,
What is the question that we did not ask you but should have? And if so, what was your response to that question?
you've asked a lot of questions about what you all can do to help the situation of diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech and those sorts of things. But you haven't asked what other people should be doing. And I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, but being held accountable is definitely part of that answer. We should be asking corporations, universities, government, literally anyone involved in education, in tech, whether they understand that this is an issue, right? If we're relying on tech being for our population and that representation isn't there, that diversity is skewed, we're not supporting our population. And that becomes a social issue that governments should care about, but I mean, they've got other things on their hands. But this should be a priority for a lot of people that it's just not a priority for. It's very hard to hold university lecturers accountable for who takes that course, although there's certainly some correlation with bad lecturers and certain proportions of students, let's say. But universities more generally should be more open about what they're doing. Clubs and societies, if you can be more open about what your goals are, what you're doing to address the problem, it means that you can start having those conversations about whether or not this is working. I know a lot of diversity initiatives that merrily go along their way and do bugger all. Like they just don't improve things. But if they're not tracking the right metrics, then they'll just keep going. We all need to do better at holding ourselves accountable and being more public about what we're trying to achieve. And I mean, in research, saying we tried this and it failed is very difficult to get a publication out of, but is really good science. And we need to be doing more of that across the board in terms of we tried this and it didn't work, and supporting people who are acknowledging that, as well as looking for answers. That was a bit of a ramble.
That was a good ramble. It was a nice way to end off tonight. So with that, I just want to say on behalf of everyone here and all our listeners, thank you so much for coming along. I will compile a screenshot of all the lovely messages I've been sent about this talk, because I had people messaging me saying this is really good and they've really appreciated some of the stuff I had to bring to the table.
I will compile a reading list
yes.
for all of your listeners, and
yes.
you should all go out and get a plant.
Yes, so plants and books are the solution.
Yeah.
So Nikki's going to be around on Twitter, on Discord and social, so feel free to chat her up at some point if you have questions. Otherwise, we'll see you guys